Hey, I'm Metal, and welcome back to the Horror House. Creatures, monsters, anything that goes bump in the night. I always find myself that I'm very drawn to these things. Maybe it's the artist in me, but man, I love these creatures, these monsters, from horror movies to horror games. Anytime I'm playing a horror game or watching a horror movie, secretly I'm cheering them on because, let's be honest, we all want that creature, that monster to have its day. There's one game though that has always interested me in the creature design to the horrors that have brought us back in October 14th of 2008. That's right, I'm talking about Dead Space.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. When the blazing sun is gone.
And today we're going to start our series, which I'm very excited about, on the monsters of Dead Space. But before we get started, if you enjoy this video, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that bell so you do not miss out on the next video coming out. Now, let's jump into this. Dead Space is probably one of the most iconic horror games to probably ever come out. It really pushed the boundaries, not just for sci-fi horror in general, but for the horror genre in general back in 2008. And I would argue, even to this day, it's probably still one of the best horror games out there. It holds up as one of the best survival horror games, let's be honest here. The atmosphere, the pure terror that you feel when you're in space, knowing that there's really no escape for you, and you have to fight your way through these creatures that just come at you, that hunt you down, and try and mutilate you. Dead Space, the whole franchise, introduces us to some of the most creepiest monsters out of, I'd say, any horror game or horror movie, well, probably since John Carpenter's The Thing. In my opinion, Dead Space is kind of like The Thing, but in space, in a sense anyways. There's a ton of monsters in this franchise, so much lore, so much in-depth lore in this whole series, that it was hard for me to figure out where should we start. And I think the best way to start this series is to start from the base of these creatures, the Necromorphs, kind of like as a whole. And then in other videos, we'll jump into the single creatures one by one and break them down, even the anatomy of them. So what are necromorphs? Well, necromorphs are reanimated, mutated corpses, reshaped into what we'd call a nightmarish creature. Some would say they're space zombies, but they're not out there craving brains. First of all, this all starts with something called the markers. These markers are extraterrestrial in nature, aliens, and the main purpose of these markers are to create necromorphs, which would lead into a convergence event. Now, these markers, they broadcast a very highly concentrated electromagnetic signal. And what this signal does is that if there's any dead tissue in the vicinity of this signal, let's just say that it changes on a very cellular level, converting that dead tissue into necromorph tissue, which then reanimates the corpse of any biological creature, humans, animals, or any kind of other, let's say, aliens on another planet. So it reanimates these dead corpses, brings them back from the dead, and the sole purpose of these necromorphs is to murder and infect and spread this infection as far as it can on the given planet that they're on, creating a mass of dead necrotic flesh, balling it all up into one giant necromorph moon, adding to the many other necromorph moons called the Brethren moons, to where they continue their galaxy-wide extinction event, destroying all organic matter in the universe until there's nothing left. Now, let's dial that back because that's a whole other thing. Now, the signal brings back the dead into these necromorphs, space zombies if you want to call it that, but does this signal have any effect on the living? Why, yes it does. It doesn't necessarily work in the same way as it does on dead corpses. It doesn't just like explode them and they're like, ah! And they become necromorphs. Not like that. The signal itself has an effect on the human brain, or any other living brain that's not human. And with this signal, it usually develops in kind of like a mental illness, like dementia, or making the person become hostile, suicidal, homicidal, which leads those people into spreading the infection. Because if you think about it, if they're homicidal, suicidal, they're killing themselves or they're killing other people, well, that's just more dead tissue for the signal to reanimate into necromorphs. Now, there is more than just one way that this infection spreads, and that's through the necromorph pathogen. It's basically these like reanimated cells created by the markers, and it's carried by these specialized necromorphs, which are called infectors. So they carry this infection and they either kill you or they inject the dead corpse with that infection. And at the beginning of Dead Space 2, which you'll see right here, this is probably the best example given. Of course, you see it in Dead Space 1 as well, but this is probably the best example that you see. It's one of my favorite clips. It's so disgusting and brutal. God, I love it. Very much like The Thing, like I've said before. And if you haven't seen The Thing, definitely check out The Thing, John Carpenter's. The swarms are another way that it passes on its pathogen, and it's noted that you first must be dead in order for this infection to take hold of your body. People who are living and they come into contact with this, they don't turn. Become more sick, disoriented, vomiting everywhere, possible diarrhea as well, paralysis, hard to breathe. So it makes them really sick and more vulnerable to these necromorphs, where they can hunt them down and kill these people, and then reanimate them into necromorphs. But there's more ways that a living person can become a necromorph. Let's say you get really hungry. There's not much to eat, so you decide to, consume a bunch of necrotic flesh. Why? You're hungry. Maybe you're dabbling in the culinary arts, and you want to try some new meats. I don't know. But you consume a bunch. So this tissue that you ingest over time will slowly transform you into a necromorph. A specific one called the feeder. So again, you have to consume a lot of this necrotic flesh. Now, what is the transformation like into a necromorph? Well, it is fast and severely brutal. At a cellular level, the body pretty much begins to self-destruct, breaking it down, going into overdrive, reanimating flesh to fuel this fire that's breaking down this body, reshaping it into something out of this world. It's the mutation of the dead host. Bones begin to break and snap. Those bones begin to transform and reform into other appendages, other bone structures, reforming and changing the anatomy of that organism, creating intense heat within the body to where the blood starts to boil, causing spasms, pustules, exploding, rupturing the skin. Parts of the organs begin to break down, and those get consumed from the body for more fuel. It starts to create additional muscle structures, giving this necromorph more speed and strength. It's a pretty brutal way, so I guess it's a good thing that the person is already dead when it happens, unless you're one of those unfortunate ones that you're still alive and you start to transform into this thing. Imagine you'd probably feel everything. Though, if the flesh is injected into the bloodstream of a living host, well, that person would rapidly change into a necromorph, feeling every little bit of it, feeling their bones break and their blood boil. Probably not the best way to go. Now, there's a lot of different types of necromorphs. So, how is it determined which one becomes what? Of course, this all depends on the location and the circumstances happening around in this area. So, example, Lurkers. They are the little baby necromorphs that you come across in the game with the little tentacles spewing out their back, and they try and shoot you with their, love nectar? Now, these are from infant organ banks for medical transplants. And thinking about it, it is possible that if a lady says miscarriages, a baby, it's getting a little dark here, that baby inside them that is now dead could become a lurker, splitting out of their belly and then infecting more people that way. It's a dark thought, but you know what? It's probably quite possible in this universe. There's also necromorphs that are created from multiple people. So we do know that there is some form of intelligence behind these transformations. Dr. Chalice Mercer was a crazy doctor, I believe, in the first one. And he created a special one called the Hunter. We call it the Hunter class, which is able to regenerate its limbs, and when you first come across it, it's coming after you, and to be honest, first time you meet this Hunter thing, it's terrifying. This is a specialized Hunter because this doctor injected necromorphic tissue into a living host's brain, which then transformed him into this Hunter being. It's a very scary encounter, but it's so great. So well done. The necromorphs, I believe, they do not have any respiratory system. All that is gone once the transformation begins, which lends to them into surviving very hostile planets or even in space, which makes sense with the end goal for all the necromorphs to merge into the giant ball of mass to create a moon, the necromorph moon, the brother moon, which survive in space and they travel to each planet, infecting and taking over that planet, pretty much. It's hard to deny that necromorphs are probably some of the creepiest monsters to ever come out of a horror game or the horror genre in general. They're creepy, they're disgusting, they're terrifying. To this day, Dead Space is still scaring new players and even old players with these necromorph monsters. One thing is for sure, I cannot wait to play the remake of this game. What about you? If you enjoyed this video, be sure to let me know your thoughts on this. Do you like the necromorph creatures? Which ones are your favorite? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to share, like, and follow for more. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.